Hello and welcome to everybody to this webinar with Inari Tilli. I'm very happy to welcome Inari here, and I have known her for many years. We met at the Polyfolia Festival in France, which was a marketplace bringing together upcoming vocal ensembles and choirs and people from the media and festival organizers. And we have met many times since, and she was involved in the design of the EPIC project, and this webinar is part of the EPIC project. So it's a very special occasion for us to welcome Inari here. And I will hand over to my colleague, Sophie Dowden, our project manager, who will introduce the webinar rules to you.
Thank you, Sonia, and welcome everyone. I'm really glad to see so many people attending. I want to just very briefly introduce you to the EPIC project. This is the second webinar in our series of webinars in this project, which focuses on improving the professionalization opportunities for young musicians. And you can see also our other partners in the project on this slide. Please note that we are recording this webinar and it will be available afterwards on Facebook and our website. We are in the webinar setting of Zoom, which has some particular features. We are going to have a wonderful presentation from Inari, and then we are going to have a question and answer session. You will see in your Zoom bar, there is a little question and answers button. And if you click on this, there is a space for you to type your questions. There is also a chat button, and many of you are already in there introducing yourselves. So that's exactly what that's for. You are muted, so we can't hear you. So do remember to write in any questions that you have, and you can vote up questions if you really want to have them answered. You also, yes, have the possibility to use the chat. If you are having problems technically, then try closing other programs so that your computer is only trying to show you this webinar. As already mentioned, there are 2 more webinars coming up, but we will come back to that later. And now I am going to pass over to Inari to give the presentation.
Thank you, Sophie and Sonia. Yes, first of all, I have to say to you, it's a huge privilege and possibility for me to attend to this webinar. And I say greetings to all of you. I can see there are many countries and already many of you attending to this webinar. Great to see you all there. Yes, maybe first I might introduce a little bit myself more. Of course, Sonia already told a little bit, but I work as a radio journalist and also a TV journalist specializing in choral music. I kind of have a stamp on my forehead whenever on the Finnish Broadcasting Company we call Yle, Yle Radio. Somebody asks something about choral music, they usually ask me because I've been doing a lot of recordings, a lot of choral music concerts and interviews about choral music. I also work, we do some other TV programs, opera programs, chamber music concerts, but usually what I'm doing, I'm working for the more classical kind of music and those kind of programs. And let's see, I think this is the most exciting moment now. I try to share to you my PowerPoint. Let's see what happens, just a couple of seconds. So let's see, I think it's there. Yes, and then one moment. Now, can you see my show? I think probably it's there. Please tell me if you can see. Sonia is showing the thumbs up. Great. So first of all, I think I might tell you about this webinar. When I was invited to talk here, it was probably about my work. And in the beginning, we were thinking that It might be something to do about interviews, how to prepare for an interview, because I know hopefully quite a lot about it. But I'm trying to tell you something more about my work too. So in this webinar, I'm trying to give you as much I can my knowledge about how choral music is used at the media, in what kind of programs it is used, etc., etc., about work possibilities for young singers in the media, about singing on the radio programs, also technically, and about contacting the media and preparing for interviews. So what I'm trying to tell you, if I didn't think about something issues or they didn't come to my mind, please ask after this about 20 minutes. I'm going to talk to you now, or 30 minutes. Let's see what I have in mind for that time. Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you about my work at the media and how I found my place at the Finnish Broadcasting Company, because it's always something to do about your own way, your own route, about luck when you are thinking about your future. If you are a young singer or a conductor and you are thinking, what should I do with my expertise in the future? So this is what happened to me. So first of all, yes, and I can tell you, I will give you this show afterwards, so you don't need to write it down if you don't have the time. So I will give it to you later on. But this is my way of how to become a choral music specialist at the Finnish Broadcasting Company. So I think that I was a quite typical child with some musicality. I went to piano lessons and I loved singing in choirs. And in the end, I was thinking, yeah, this might be my future. I want to do something with music as a profession too. So luckily I got a place at the Sibelius Academy. So I studied at the music education department there. It is a place in Helsinki, and Sibelius Academy, if some of you don't know, it's our only music university in Finland. So that was the place for me, and I was so happy to be there. And I studied a lot, different kind of music genres and different kind of instruments. And of course, I sang in many choirs already during my academic years. You can see here a list of the groups I have belonged to. Right now, I sing in Key Ensemble. It's a chamber choir, like a semi-professional chamber choir. We get some money from our gigs when all this is after, hopefully. So yes, and in the end of my studies at the Sibelius Academy, we had a course about radio work. And that was a big, huge, lucky situation for me, because I really fell in love of radio work on that course. We studied, it was spring 1997, and we studied like how to use microphones, how to talk on the radio, how to make interviews, how to edit, and so on and so on. So afterwards, we made some little programs, and luckily I probably made enough good programs that they asked me to do some programs from a freelance basis for the Finnish Broadcasting Company. I did that for a while, but then I got a better job because it was a full-time job at the Classic FM station here in Finland. And I did that work as a presenter there. So I talked a lot on the radio for about 5 years. And that was a good school for me too, to learn how to talk on the radio and how to use these technical equipments on the studio and so on. And then luckily I got a place on Christmas radio. Yes, we do actually have a Christmas radio station here in Finland. It still is. It was autumn 2003 that I actually got the chance to make playlist as a music producer. So for one autumn, I listened to so much Christmas music that I didn't actually want to listen to it anymore on the Christmas time, but that was a really good experience. I'm telling you this because I think this is very important when you are doing your own career. There's always advantage of it that I feel that you have a lot of experience from different kind of places. So I had experience of radio technically and about speaking on the radio, about different kind of stations, about choral music, of course. And then when luckily in 2004, they were looking for music journalists after a long break, actually, on the Finnish Broadcasting Company. And I was there looking for that job. I was so happy to get the job because I had all this earlier expertise. I hope that was the reason I got that job. And I've been doing that, being a music journalist since 2004 now on the Finnish Broadcasting Company. And actually it was already in 2005, my boss asked me to work with choral music. So that what I was doing, I was like thinking about the choirs that are good enough for our radio broadcasts. I was thinking about what kind of recordings we might make with the choirs and so on and so on. And that's what I've been doing for a long time now. And yes, if you want to be a music journalist on the radio or on the television, of course, you need these presenting skills on your own language. Pardon my English. Of course, it's very good to know your own mother tongue when you are going to your own countries, trying to get a job from your own country's company. And then, yes, you need to be curious, extroverted. You need to, you want to know more about the world, choral music world, or the classical music world in general. And yes, we do have a lot of deadlines, so you need a good stress tolerance in our work. And yes, those technical skills. We actually do edit our programs nowadays quite a lot ourselves. So yes, and of course, as in the whole life in general, you need good luck. So I feel very lucky that I was in the right place at the right time. Yes, this might be quite simple thing for you now, but I think it might be a good thing to show you where actually your singing or your conducting might be heard on the radio or the television or internet. So first of all, we have those playlists on our media companies. So there are actually quite many radio stations nowadays that are having playlists. That means that a music producer is choosing actually the whole music that's being played on radio channel. And the presenters are actually, they are just speaking in between, but they are not actually choosing the music that's being played on the radio station. But then what I am doing here in Finland, we have music programs where the music is chosen by the journalists. I'm working for the radio channel called Yle Radio 1. So it's actually our cultural music channel. We have programs about history, art, music, and our music there is classical, jazz, ethnic. So it's very versatile radio channel here. And it's the third, how do you say it in English? It's like it has very much listeners. It's like the third on the top of our list, if you are counting the listeners on our radio station. So we are very proud of it, that our cultural station actually has so many listeners here in Finland. Yes, you can hear choral music on the music programs that are being made by the journalists. And of course, we have interviews. We might have there in the music programs, those interviews, but of course you have interviews on the, for example, in the news programs and etc. In many places, you may be asked to do an interview with the journalist or to be interviewed by a journalist. And the main content that I am working here is concerts that are being broadcasted and competitions. We have choral music competitions. Hopefully in the close future, we can make them again. But now we are making some concerts still, but we don't have any audience, but we are actually making them for the radio only or for the internet programs about concerts still here in Finland. Hopefully in other places there in Europe too, you have the possibility still before this everything is over. And of course, yes, some radio companies still make recordings, and we actually do a couple of recordings per year with our best of the best choirs here in Finland. Yes, and I think that this might be interesting for you to know if you are a musician or a conductor, a singer, whatever your expertise is in music life. You have many possibilities to work in the media, actually. I was already telling about this journalist work, but yes, we do have producers. Producer is like more commercial work. They are actually paying the bills. They are taking care of the whole one big program and so on. And then we have recording engineers, the people who are actually putting the microphones in the right place when we are making radio broadcasts and TV broadcasts, and they are making the good like voice and listening to, and you know what I mean. And then we have, of course, we have conductors. In many radio companies, they still have radio orchestras, but yes, some companies do have radio choirs too, and they have conductors there. And then, of course, you can be a singer. And I think most of you are there very interested in about that possibility too. And I know that Josep Villa gave a very good webinar about this, how to attend and how to audition to be a singer. So please, if you haven't looked at that webinar, I really do recommend it for you, because there is a lot of good advice for that, about that issue. And yes, this is maybe not a full-time job either, but you can ask to be a jury member or an expert in some programs, and you may get some money from that work too. Usually you get. Yes. And yes, of course, when we are making those recordings with choirs and conductors, they get some money. So we are paying, the broadcasting companies are paying money for the performers. Actually, it's something to do about the rights. So here in Finland, for example, we have a Gramex who is taking care of the rights when you have recorded a CD or made some other recording. So then you actually have some rights, and the radio stations are paying for the rights, paying you money because you have made a recording. But here, for example, in Finland, we are actually paying the artists and the choirs some amount of money that we don't have to pay them anymore whenever we are playing those recordings being made by the radio company. So it's a little bit cheaper for the radio companies now to play those recordings in the future. But of course, we are paying the rights for the composers, for the poets, etc. Yes. I took a short, like a glimpse for the best radio choirs we do have right now, still working actively. There might be some others too. Sorry about if you don't see your favorite choir on the list, but here, just for you to give you some examples about where to work if you are a good singer and you would like to work for a radio company's choir. Here are the list of that came to my mind in the first place. So in BBC, they have BBC singers. On the Danish radio, they have DR vocal ensemble. And of course, Netherlands radio has its own choir. And in Germany, you have a wonderful situation. You have many choirs there in different stations. And of course, on our neighbor, we do have Swedish radio choir still. That is actually working for the radio companies. Then we do have some choirs that actually have a history of being a radio choir, but not, there might be a name still, that they have the name that it's a radio choir, but they are not actually working together under the radio shelf anymore. So, And that is what has happened sadly in Finland too. We don't have any radio choirs in Finland anymore. That could be a very good issue for a long seminar about professionalism in choral music in general. In Finland, we actually do have professional choirs on our national opera, and the Savonlinna Opera Festival has its own huge choir every summer that you actually get paid for being a singer in a choir. And we do have some chamber choirs. One is this Helsinki Chamber Choir, who is actually after the Radio Chamber Choir has they have continued its work, but it's a different organization, but actually it has a history of being a radio chamber choir beforehand. And the Key Ensemble, where I am singing, we also get some money from our gigs, but not a lot. But anyway, it's better than nothing. Yes, let's continue. What we do have in Finland, sadly, we don't have those radio choirs anymore, but we actually choose a youth choir of the year every year. So we are trying to promote and get the importance of a youth choir genre in Finland so that they get 2 concerts being broadcasted and we make a recording with them. And of course, we are trying to give them publicity about being a youth choir of the year. So that's one thing I'm doing here. We do make recordings. We have programs in different medias, radio, TV. Yle Arena is the place where we put all our broadcasts. And usually the concerts can be heard like for 1 month afterwards. And I think it's also internationally, but maybe it's a little bit interesting for you because it's only in Finnish and maybe they are quite not so easy to find. But if you sometimes need to know something about where is that concert, I know that the choir was broadcasted by Finnish Broadcasting Company, please send me email. I might send you the link because it's also possible to listen to the concerts internationally. Yes, and we do make EBU, that means European Broadcasting Union exchange. That's a wonderful sort of exchange. So we actually do have a system that I can send here a concert, for example, made by a Portugalian radio station here in Finland, and vice versa. They can use our material for a certain amount of time. Yes, and then of course, competitions we are making and music programs and interviews. That was not a new thing anymore. Yes, and then about singing on the radio, about technical issues that might interest some of you. So there are some things that are a little bit different than comparing to a normal, I mean by a normal recording made by a choir or a conductor. That means that you are making a recording for CD or nowadays for the internet and etc. But for the radio, it's a little bit different. I asked our engineer, Antti Pohjola, how he is doing recordings when he is doing choral music recordings, because this is not my expertise. I'm there producing and listening to the choirs, but I don't know so much about microphones. But this is what he wrote to me about the microphones. When recording a choir for radio, first I need to make sure that choir sounds good. Also, the listeners must be able to hear everything. In Finland, the radio transmission chain is analog FM still. In FM, the dynamic range is roughly 50 decibels. That's not a lot. A modern choir piece can easily have a dynamic range of 80 decibels. Some sort of compression must be done. My job, this means Antti's job, is to make sure it is done as transparently as possible. This leads to the fact that I can't put all microphones too far from the choir. Most, if not all, recordings are done from places that are not completely quiet. Because of the background noise, I need to have mics also relatively close to the singers. And this is, here you can see this microphone setup for radio recordings broadcast contains typically something like this. And this is told by Yle engineer Antti Pohjola. I won't tell you so much about it, but what I understand, it's like usually they have like a stereo pair in front of the choir. If you have been on the radio recordings, you might know what I mean. It's like in the front of the choir, and then they have several smaller microphones closer to the singers. And here if you know more about microphones, here is a list by Antti he has made for us to see. And yes, in the beginning of my PowerPoint list, yes. So what I was trying to tell you, actually, it's a little bit different than normal recordings, what we are doing for the radio. So usually they have less echo and microphones are closer to singers than in usual recordings. And I think that's the same. The best locations for the radio and also for, I think, all choir recordings is, of course, church, concert hall, and studio. Sometimes when it depends on the program. If you have a vocal ensemble singing pop music, of course, the studio might be the best place for that kind of recording. And yes, one good hint for you, not all microphones are all recording. So the engineer is like deciding what to use. So please don't be scared if one microphone is very close to you. That might be not like on that microphone. And one good hint, because I have a good example. We had a singing competition in Finland, and there was a very diva kind of singer who was actually very annoyed because of the place of the microphone. And she didn't know that actually the microphone wasn't like recording at all. So let the engineer do his job or her job, because they have so many things going on, and they are of course trying to make the best possible solution for all kinds of recordings. But yes, sometimes if you are not in a competition where you have like 100 competitors, you might have the possibility to go to the radio car and to listen for a while after the sound check. That's sometimes possible too. You can ask, and sometimes the producer maybe can ask you to, yeah, do you want to listen? That's possibility. It's a possibility. Then you are doing work together, and sometimes engineers really like to hear your opinions about the solutions that he has made or she has made too. So, but one thing more, we really do have different types of recordings. That's very good to keep in mind. We have live concerts, we have revered concerts that are actually, yes, you mean later on, we record it, but then we send it later on. That means revered. And yes, we do have different kind of editing situations. Sometimes we make recordings with no editing at all. That's for the competitions, for example. There may be some rules for example, Let the People Sing competition has been a competition where you shouldn't have to make any editing for those entries. And of course, we do have some editing for some kind of recordings. Usually the radio recordings we don't do so much editing as in some other choral music recordings, because we don't actually have time for that, and we try to keep it as live kind of recording as possible. So there are many reasons for our the amount of editing we are doing, but sometimes yes, we might do. In some companies they might actually do like a co-work with some recording companies, and they are actually using a lot of time for the editing part too. Then about preparing for an interview. This might be interesting for you, and I try to give you as much as I can knowledge about that. There are, of course, different kind of interviews, live or deferred, audio or visual or both. And like a shortest example is, on my point of view, is Gallup. You might be on the street and somebody asks something very shortly from you, and then you might be in the other end, you might be a specialist for like 1 hour or even longer program, and you are being asked a lot of questions about your own expertise and your field. Will you get money from the interview? Yeah, it depends. Usually we don't pay so much money, because actually it's a win-win situation usually for also for the singers and conductors. Actually you are promoting yourself, and actually we don't pay it, but sometimes yes, if you are actually in a role of a specialist in some programs. And if you are like we use specialists for like we have a competition, a choral music competition, we might use a specialist on our programs, and we are kind of discussing with the specialist afterwards and so on. Yes, and sometimes it's wise if you really are a specialist, or that the interview is going to be very long, then it might be a good thing to maybe to have a phone call earlier with the journalist, or to ask for a list of questions beforehand. But one thing, it might not be a good idea to write everything down. I have had some, I have made some interviews that actually they were quite boring, because the person I was interviewing was only reading the text he had written. So that might be not very wise thing to do, because you always should be feeling that you are yourself in the interview. It's better to look and better to listen to when you are like that. Yes. And then I come to that, how to prepare for an interview. I don't know the answer actually. One of my colleagues has told me that the hardest thing to be is yourself on a live broadcast, for example. You just have to be yourself. I don't know what to do, but try to breathe and relax. And of course, it's like in every case in our lives, if you are doing more interviews in your life, then you are more relaxed because you already know where you are coming, of course. So it comes easier and easier after years and years, hopefully, for people. So, of course, referred broadcasts, there might be like interviews that are very flexible, and we might do that interview in short sections, and we might use a lot of time for those. And if you are making a mistake, I can record it again and so on. Of course, live broadcasts are the way of broadcast that, yes, it goes, and afterwards, no editing. That's easy. That's the best thing in live broadcast. You don't have any editing to do. It's over. But you have to concentrate better beforehand and know more about what you are going to say. Yes, and of course, try to avoid words like well, like, I mean, because when I'm doing editing, I hear a lot of I mean. In Finnish language, we have niinku, you know what I mean, things. They are quite annoying afterwards when you are listening to your own talking. But of course, when we are doing referred interviews, I can cut them off. I'm usually helping people and not using them as much as in live broadcasts. And yes, don't speak too rapidly. I have already done the mistake today. I'm probably speaking too rapidly. That's so hard thing to do when you are a little bit excited. You are usually talking more rapidly. Of course, there are cultural differences with this, but that's the thing I have been trying to do all my career, to talk more clearer, but being myself at the same time. And one hint for the TV programs, because I'm doing them a little bit myself too. When you are a guest on the program, you don't need to look at the camera. So you are actually talking with the journalist. So you can relax. You don't have to take care of the show. So that's a good thing to know. And of course, then comes the makeup when you are on the television. If you are, especially for women, this might be actually a very important thing to know if beforehand. Do you have a makeup made by the TV company or not? So usually they tell you beforehand, and they have very good advice for you beforehand what to do when you are coming to the TV broadcast. And one more slide to show you before starting the interviews. I think starting the questions, to answer the questions, hopefully. Yes, how to contact. This is also quite a tricky question to answer, but I think what I have found is usually people are contacting me. They usually have like an idea of a concert. They have an idea of something, some program, whatever. Please try to be as clear as possible. So please show your like already what, where, and when. So then we, on the radio companies, we are like it's more easier for us to say, to check our calendars and to check, is this a good idea? And I can like pass forward this to our producers, for example, and they can make decisions about. And yes, one very important thing, contacting early enough. Now the life is a little bit different because of the corona, but we are more flexible. But we used to have for the radio, like it was like in Finland, something like 6 months earlier, probably it would be a good thing to know about radio concerts. And for the TV, even a longer time ahead, it's a good thing to know about your ideas and what you would like to give us and what would be interesting for the radio and TV broadcasting company. And yes, and then the tricky question, try to find the right person. That's probably the trickiest thing you need to do. So the best way is to find the web pages. If you know somebody from the broadcasting company, then you can ask her or he maybe who is the right person. Usually it goes like that here in Finland, that when somebody asks me, well, I have this kind of idea, then I can help them further because I know the persons here on our company better than the person who is not working here. Yes, and we of course have many ways of contacting. Email is sometimes very good because you can, it's black on white, what is the idea and so on. Phone is sometimes if you don't hear anything from the producer, yes, you can phone he or her and you show your interest. But please don't be too pushy either, because they have, usually the producers have many things going on. They have many other things and money, other choirs and orchestras are, for example, contacting them. But don't be too shy either, because yes, and try, if it's not going, if your idea it's not going through this time, you might do it again in the future. So yes, this is all about, there might be some disappointments in this because we have so many things going on, but please be brave and try again. You never know, there might be a place for you in the future. So I hope you could listen to my English talking. And if you have anything to ask, I'm more than glad to answer to your questions. There might be some other issues that they didn't come to my mind in the first place. So I'm here waiting for the questions now. Maybe I can stop sharing the screen, maybe.
Yep, that would be great. And we do already have some questions coming through. So let me just see here. So we have a first question from an anonymous attendee. So sorry, I can't attribute this to somebody. But they say, I studied music in college, but I did not study media or radio. I currently present a show on choral music on my local public radio station, but I would love to get into professional radio work. What next steps can you recommend?
That's a really good question, because that sounds very similar what I've been doing. I didn't actually work for the local station, but yes, what you can do is, what I would suggest, I actually didn't tell you that even I didn't have so many, I didn't study media. Of course, you can do it in probably every country. You can study journalism and media. That's a good advice for you, because that's a good combination. Maybe in some other countries, it's more important when you are trying to get a job on the radio company to have those studies beforehand. But in Finland, we have like 30 music journalists on the Finnish Broadcasting Company right now. So I think the main thing for us is that we have studied music. So that's like our main knowledge. And then we have studied how to work on the media in our work, or like it's coming from our yes, by doing, learning by doing, I have to say. But yeah, one good hint would be that, yes, be brave and ask for the radio company near you and try to find the producer who is taking care of music programs. And usually they are called head of music or the like principal music journalist, and they can help you there to find the right person who is actually the probably who would be the boss for you there. And you can send, actually, you can, yes, be active, call them or send them email, and you can actually sometimes you can like make a program because you have been doing your radio programs already. You can send them like an example of what you have been doing. I think that this would be a good advice, and I wish you good luck because that's how it goes. Be brave.
Great. And then we have a second question from Kjetil. Hi, Kjetil. Can you give an example of a production where an ensemble has contacted you and given you a proposal?
Yes, well, actually it goes very often like that. So what happens, it might be a choir or a vocal ensemble. They usually send me email to give you an example of that. They give me an email, hello, we are an ensemble from there and there, and we have this program. It's a very interesting program about, usually they have like some premiere coming. That's what I forgot to tell you. When we are choosing like a radio concerts, usually the national radio broadcasting companies, we are very much interested about what is going on. Who is the young composers, of course, older composers, but about new compositions. That is very like typical for the radio companies. We want to follow the cultural life. So that might be a good hint for you to like to have something like premieres or some other like interesting, maybe older music that's not being performed for a long time on in your country. Of course, just the typical programming also, because you might be like here, you might get us, if you are not very well-known group already, you might give us like a YouTube link or some other link for how you are singing for us. That's a good one example of it. If you are like a new becomer on our field. Yes, and then you are just, usually if you are talking about a radio broadcast, we need to know the place and the day, the time, and the program. That's much easier. We usually don't like to have like, would it, a question like that, would it be possible to make co-working? Because usually we choose the concerts that are being broadcast. So we can kind of refer of what you are doing. We are not doing our own concerts, but sometimes we do that too, but yes, but typically like this.
Fantastic. And we have a question about the choral piece that we had at the beginning of the webinar. This is one of our favorite pieces. I have used it at the beginning of the first webinar we did in this series as well. It is Las Olas de la Mar, and it was the World Youth Choir performing it in 2019, and I believe it was conducted by Josep Vila, who did the first webinar in this series.
Great.
So thank you very much for that question. I'm glad that you like it.
There is another question in the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to go to that. There was somebody asking as well from, this is from Algeciras, how many choirs are there in Finland?
Oh no, can I answer? I don't know. We have a reputation in Finland, or we think ourselves that we have a reputation of it, that we have a lot of choirs in here in Finland. Oh, I don't know the exact number. I think there might be thousands. If you are interested to see, sadly, it's probably in Finnish language, but we have an organization called Sulasol, SULASOL, yes, Sulasol. And it's the organization for our choral singers and also some players too. They might have some information about it, but I think it's like, I've been told that it's like several hundred thousands people in Finland are somehow involved in choral music, choral singing, and we have about something over 5 million people living in Finland right now. So maybe that's yes. We have many singers who are actually, we have very good amateur choirs, but as I told you, not so many professional choirs, sadly, in Finland.
Yeah.
Maybe I can add something to that. We did a study some years ago called Singing Europe, and Kom, who is among the people watching this webinar, he did a lot of work on, together with a colleague, collecting statistics on the number of choirs in Europe. So I will put it in the chat. There is a website, Singing Europe, where you can look up the number of choirs for different countries with the statistics we collected between 2012 and 2015.
Perfect. And yeah, thank you, Kom, for putting that in the chat. And also Kom and Kjetil for sharing about Sulasol there as well.
Great.
We have another couple of questions that have been sent in, another anonymous one. Do you have any metrics on the actual impact for a choir of being broadcasted through the radio? Is it worth the effort compared to trying to get a direct audience through social media?
That's a good question nowadays, because I think we are living in a situation in the world that nobody knows about the future. But I can give you some statistics. We have counted, and in Finland, when we have a concert being broadcasted, it's still on our normal radio, on-air radio broadcast. It's like it can be something like 100,000 listeners there. They are, I mean, Finnish listeners, of course, but then it's growing and growing, the amount of listeners also afterwards on the internet. And yes, I don't have a good answer for that, because I think this year we have been living together. Sadly, the last months we have been living, I have seen here in Finland, for example, probably also in other countries too, you have the same thing, that the choirs are quite good in making their own internet programs already. So let's see what happens. But I think one good thing that we have still on the radio companies and TV companies, we have a good quality. And actually in Finland, we have technical quality, and we have made also some kind of co-work with some festivals. So actually we give them the audio for, if we have one like music festival and they are having their own streaming from that festival without any audience, in this situation we are living right now, but we are co-working, so that the radio engineers here at the Finnish Broadcasting Company, we are giving the voice, the audio for the organizers, and actually they get from us the best audio possible. So we don't have to have like several microphones there. So that might be one thing. We might have more co-working in the future. But yes, I don't have an answer for that. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, at the beginning of this.
Yeah.
And then we have another question from Charlotte Galloway, who first of all says, thank you for your talk. It's been great. Can you give any advice about how to get advertised on the radio? She and a friend have just set up a project called That Sounds Fun. That sounds fun on social media, and would love to learn how to share it with others.
Yes, that's a good question. Again, yes, of course, advertising on the radio, it's very easy if you have some money and you are doing co-working with the commercial radio, then you're just paying some money for the commercial radio. When I was working at the Classic FM station in Finland about 20 years ago, we had some advertisements. They were actually not so expensive, you might think, if you think, because usually the radio stations, at least during that time, they had different kind of levels. Of course, if it's a big company, they can pay more and maybe they get more time from the radio time for their advertisements. But for a small group of singers, it might be cheaper. You can always ask the commercial radio station for the possibility. And of course, sometimes they are doing like that kind of co-working, that they might sing in somewhere like in the Christmas party or something, and then they get the advertisement cheaper because they are kind of co-working. I don't know what is the situation in other countries, but you can always ask. When you are co-working with like a national broadcasting company that's not doing advertising, it's like based on tax money, you don't have any advertisements there, commercial advertisements. Then, well, you can try to get yourself in a radio show. You just send again emails for the journalists and ask, please, is there any place we can tell about our project? Sometimes it can happen, sometimes they tell no, but you can always try to get your voice heard on the radio programs. That's what the managers are doing all the time. So please don't be shy. You can do it yourself too. You don't have to use manager for that. And yes, about social media, we are actually, yes, that's again, very interesting thing what's happening. It's kind of cross. I have a social media page called Kuorokuiskaaja on Facebook. It's a choir whisperer in Finnish language. And I'm trying to keep in touch with all the choirs in Finland, and if I see something interesting, I'm forwarding things there. That's one thing I'm doing. Actually, I forgot to tell you about that, but one thing I am doing here in Finland. But yes, about social media, that's interesting part. You don't have to pay probably anything, but yes, if you want to have more. If you want to be shown more, of course, Facebook, they ask money from you sometimes. If you probably know these things, how it's going, but better than me. But yes, sorry, I don't have a more clear answer for that, but hopefully you got something from this.
Well, I think there is a really clear message through a lot of your answers there, that it's just so important to try and to be brave and to reach out and to make the effort. So that's great. I have another question. We spoke earlier about how not all countries have a lot of radio choirs anymore. So how is it that choirs tend to be chosen for singing on the radio?
Yes, that's a good question. I think what I've been doing actually in my work, I try to follow the choral music world in Finland in general. That's a hard job. Usually the best place to see and hear is the festivals, where I can hear new choirs, like young choirs. I think when you are doing this many years, you kind of know better and better of what is going on. I'm listening to the recordings and trying to keep the artistic level as high as possible. But of course, it's always individual choosing I'm doing. I'm just a person who is choosing. I'm trying to use my knowledge about it. But yes, sometimes it's good that you are telling us journalists about yourself. So that was about not being shy. But yes, it's what we music journalists are trying to, for example, here in Finland, to keep the possibility that, how do you say it in English? It's like we don't take only choirs from Helsinki region. We are trying to see the whole Finland. If you have in central Finland a good choir, we are trying to also take them sometimes and give them the possibility to have a concert for the radio. And so many choirs, but I try to keep the level as high as possible, even for the amateur choirs. Yes, that's a tricky question, but it's about choosing, yes, and making decisions. That's a hard work, yeah.
And I suppose also, so it's then necessary to have those opportunities to see what is going on. So
yes,
and so it's something it's something that you would like then to get invited to choral events in your country and in different countries.
Yes,
discover new choirs.
Yes, and I forgot to tell you, there are some choirs that they are giving invitation for journalists for their concerts for free. That's a typical thing. So please do ask journalists to come to your concerts. Nowadays, it's even more easier internationally also, because if you have a web concert, you can like give your link free for that concert. So that's a good thing, because we journalists, we don't have all the money to come to all the concerts in the world. So please don't ask us to pay money. That's the one thing that's like a best thing of being a journalist. Usually I don't have to pay any money for the concerts. So one good example of why to be a music journalist, you have the possibility to hear a lot of good music at your work. But yes, yes, maybe I don't have, right now I don't have more in my head to say about this issue.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That is amazing timing. We had said this would be about an hour. We were at 11:58, and we have reached the end of the questions that people have asked there. So I really want to say thank you very much, Inari. I'm going to pass over to my colleague Estera to give a few details of what comes next. And let me just share my screen in order to do that.
Thank you, everybody.
Also, I think I speak for everybody when I say thank you, Inari. It was a great talk, and I think we all got a lot of insight. And because of that, we're also going to make the webinar available for a later review if you're interested, or to share within your networks. So we're going to post it on our YouTube channel, and you're also going to find the live recording on Facebook. Also, there's 2 new webinars coming up, so you're going to receive a follow-up email also with the presentation from Inari and a feedback form, where we really encourage you to write topics that you're interested in or that you find relevant, and we're going to do our best to make it happen. And yeah, if you're not registered for the webinar, just write to Sophie a quick email at sophie.dowden@europeanchoralassociation.org, and she'll take it from there. And of course, if you like this one, you'll probably like the other ones. So let's stay in touch. You will find us on social media almost everywhere. And also you find in the chat the link to subscribe to our newsletter. So that's where we write our newest updates regularly. And now I think it's time for Sonia to say goodbye to us all.
Yeah, so thank you very much for all those who are listening or were listening and watching, both here in the webinar as well as on Facebook, where we had some more people following us. And thank you very much, Inari, for all the information, the inspiration, the insight you gave. It was very positive and inspiring, I think. And I'm sure many people have taken away some ideas for their future. So thank you so much, and goodbye, everybody.